Welcome back. In this episode, we'll delve into the importance of strategic AI and data collaboration amongst the Five Eyes nations. We'll explore the ethical dilemmas and strategic manoeuvres that define this crucial alliance in the face of emerging global threats. How do these countries maintain their good guy status whilst effectively countering adversaries with fewer scruples? And what can be done to ensure that the Western approach to warfare, both in technology and information, remains both effective and legitimate? So the next thing we were going to chat about, gents, was strategic collaboration on AI with Five Eyes and legislative initiatives. So recently there's been a bill introduced by Mike Gallagher and Ro Khanna aimed at introducing AI collaboration amongst Five Eyes countries. Formation of interagency working groups and developing and coordinating these initiatives. I mean, AI, if you don't have AI in your title these days, or you're not talking about AI with anything you do, whether it's, making the kids lunch, well, it feels like you're going to get left behind. But so what does this actually mean? What do these introductions of these bills actually mean?
Well, I think, for us in open societies in the West, this goes back to it's a long-term problem, right? It's one of these, and it's one that's accelerating in that most of the innovation for us no longer happens in the military or the government. It happens in the private sector and even in the academic sector. And those are the sectors that are most inclined to, toward, sort of cross-border information sharing or collaboration. And they don't have the same scruples, national security scruples, that we on this call would necessarily have, right? And so it's trying to figure out, how do we promote the right kind of academic or research collaboration for our independent and separate universities, corporate entities, those kinds of things? How do we get all that going while at the same time denying it to our adversaries? That's where it gets tough.
Yeah. Pete, you would have had a bit of experience working in this particular field, especially given the programs you've been working on the last couple of years around safe and secure data and information sharing across networks. How's AI contributed to the development of those platforms in your view?
Well, it's like every government in the world, I think. It's now been brought to consciousness, and it's not just about getting your invoice faster. It's now about what we can do with it from both a defence point of view, but also from an intelligence gathering point of view, and also potentially mission delivery point of view. So what's interesting is that when you manually design something like a network or an outcome, you have a predictive outcome understood, and you're looking for that thing to do what it does. With AI, it has the potential, and I'm only saying potential at this point, to run off by itself. Now, this means under conditions that it will receive, it may in fact execute a slight tangent of motion forward, force posture perhaps, that might not be anticipated. More importantly, around the intelligence gathering side, this is where misinformation can be injected quite easily into the whole mix. It's very complex. I don't think any government has solved it, but of course there's lots of rhetoric around it at the moment.
And I guess, similar to the topic we were discussing earlier, especially in the Five Eyes community. I mean, do we all need to be on similar platforms, on the same wavelength, to ensure collaboration?
My experience at the moment is, I think, in a military environment, that the militaries aren't sufficiently educated enough yet to operationalise the AI concept and how it can be brought to bear in terms of the delivery of military power to prosecute national objectives. So there's a ways to go. It's obviously on everybody's radar. I think if you put 10 people in a room and ask them what AI was, you'd get 10 different answers. But there's no doubt about it. It can bring weight to bear. It can bring advantage. That seems to be without doubt. But what it is, how to use it, and how to apply it, I guess, is still something that we've got to learn and understand. But I agree with Ray. The private sector's kind of leading the way here. I'm not quite sure the military understands how that could be applied yet. Maybe I'm just speaking from these shores only. But there's certainly something there to be had. I'm just not quite sure collectively the military understands what that is yet.
Well, really, we're actually already using it, Pad AI. We're using machine learning to, look at hundreds or thousands of photographs to determine lat-long positions and then, inform. It's not deciding yet. It's not auto-executing yet. So artificial intelligence is actually being used, but in a very passive way. And what we have to do is to get ahead of the curve so that we understand what it can be done in both defense and force posture.
Look, we're using it in a lot of different aspects, right? We're using it, like Pete said, for that. We're using it to data mine, say parts that you can use for different things, right? We're using AI to fly drones, but we can't. Nobody in any circle can agree on how or what platform we're going to use. We are so far away from being able to agree amongst Five Eyes, right? Even in the Five Eyes, you look at the laws and, the different countries, whether it comes to privacy or how they look at the military. I don't see us getting to any kind of agreement jointly with everybody in the Five Eyes anytime soon, and without getting folks definitely more educated and have a plan.
Well, Matt, it may not matter because as we were talking about, the private sector is running out way out in front of us. And there are private sector companies now looking for government contracts and getting them who are already ingesting vast amounts of data, which is something that AI needs. It needs a lot of data. And then it needs that data to be cleaned. In other words, it has to sort of be put into a format where the different streams of data can talk to each other. And sometimes, that process is expensive and it's complex. But once you do it and once you have it, you have something that's very valuable. And what this may end up being, and I think this is something we're already seeing, is in the way that the open source intelligence world is catching up to, and in some cases passing and lapping the government intelligence functions, because we in government, I speak as if I'm still in government, are still trapped within our stovepipes, whereas all of these private sector companies are going out and they are just putting this stuff together and they're saying, here, I can tell you, within a 12-hour period that this event is going to happen in 4 months. And they're actually pretty damn close to right. So, it may not matter how fast we as a US or Australian or a Five Eye community can do it, because somebody's already doing it. And if we don't get with that, then we're going to be behind our adversaries because they're going to figure it out.
Totally agree. Like we have to get on the right page, but I just don't, that cleaning process, depending on who's doing the cleaning is how the information comes out. Right. And so if you haven't figured out who you're going to have clean that data before it gets entered into the AI system, what comes out for us may be different than what comes out for New Zealand or Canada if they're using different cleaners or filters, however you want to put it, right? And so that's the tough part for me to kind of wrap my head around is how is that gonna work, right?
Because what it sounds to me like what Ray's describing, quite accurately, I'm sure, is that, in the government circles, we're inhibiting ourselves collectively, I guess, by the bureaucratic and policy frameworks, whereas the private sector is not inhibited in that sense. So they're just exploiting everything that's available to them, resources, systems, processes, and otherwise, in order to take advantage and exploit the data, etc., that they need. What that does from a military perspective, I guess, is it doesn't sort of lend itself to being able to exploit to the fullest extent to enable operational manoeuvre, which is what the military is after. But is it how I described? Is that really what we're talking about? That the being inhibited by extant bureaucratic and policy frameworks, or is it something more than that?
If we waited for government to actually take action and do something and make a decision, would we not be miles behind? Our competitors in the region? Our folks to the north.
The function of DIU, things like that, to kind of curate what that technology might be and how to bring it forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Defense Innovation Unit, which is actually here, headquartered here, pretty close to where I'm sitting right now. I mean, their job is to sort of try to facilitate that process, but ultimately, what we're dealing with is things that are emerging organically from the private sector. There are people out there who figured out how to monetize this, and they can show up at Strategic Command's door with a near finished product and say, I can tell you where all the missiles are. Then Strategic Command's going to say, oh, well, okay, I'll take one of those. Here's $1 billion. And by the way, that's all classified now. When we think about vulnerabilities to vacuum up vast amounts of information, which brings us back to the AI thing, right? Because that's what AI needs. So if I'm in Beijing and I am trying to figure out what are the exploitable opportunities in another society, I want as much data as I can get. And I'm just going to feed it into my huge AI gonculator and let it gonculate out some conclusions or some anomalies or some trends that I can say, well, there's something I can exploit right now. Because, it wouldn't occur to me to think, well, I should know what, some adolescent kid is doing on their iPhone. But that's data, and data can be useful if you're trying to exploit vulnerabilities.
Yeah, the latest acronym is called HANDLE, Hack Now, Decrypt Later. And so the hoovering of data is where this is occurring, and we know that's occurring, where nation-state countries are using their state universities' quantum computers to do the decrypting. And because you've got an absolute ocean, lake, you name it, of data with asymmetric data points. So what was collected during the Australia's Optus breach were largely around the identity assertion requirements, your driver's license, your electricity bill, that kind of thing. Now those are data points, but they're also independent asymmetric attack points for a later cause. Now that was 10 million Australians affected, and what we're finding is a knock-on and a flow-on effect as data is being hoovered up. So I think until we have our ability to assert our own identity in a encrypted, structured way and not hand over a photocopy. We're in the 21st century and people are still asking for a photocopy of your driver's license and your electricity bill. I mean, come on. And then, worse, hold it in their database for years. Now, the Latitude breach went on into as far back as 2012 with the General Electric organization and the number of acquisitions that went through. So we've had our data breached by General Electric and right up through to Latitude as far back as 2012. I remember buying my first modem at Harvey Norman, and so I'm on that list. And so it comes down to how are we going to protect our data and our provenance of our data and assert our identity going forwards.
I've just made a mental note to myself, no more faxes to Pete.
This fax you speak of, this fax you speak of, this is a new technology? A fax?
Yes.
It's the first part of faux pas.
It's an acronym for... I love it.
I was waiting till the ink ran out, but anyway.
Okay, well, if I may bring up something like the critical infrastructures and even our own agriculture environment, all relies upon GPS and other satellite or non-terrestrial networks, bent pipes in the sky, to deliver such services. So it's no longer about what can be fought on the ground. Paddy, you raised it at the very beginning. One of those attack domains, or one of those domains under pressure, is the space domain. What does it look like when we've got other nations who are well funded pointing their resources in that direction for both obfuscation and also trying to nobble what we're using?
Yeah, they talk in military circles. They talk a lot about the integration of cyber and space into the multi-domain fight. I contend that what we are actually doing is integrating those traditional sort of three domains, land, maritime and air, into the space and cyber domains. And I share Ray's view about the information domain. I'd add that too. I agree 100%. And that little twist, I think, has much more to it than people would probably think at first glance. And I hear people more and more talking like that now too, about how and where integration is actually occurring and which way it's occurring. Look, there's a lot going on in those domains, and Australia is pretty embryonic. It's got a modest sort of posture, I guess, at the moment in those domains. Like a lot of countries, it's a lot of new technology. It's big dollars. There's a lot of investment needed and so forth, and it's moving pretty rapidly. But it's a challenge for us. There's no doubt about it. And the complexity of those environments, particularly space, is kind of mouth-watering and eye-watering at the same time about what's going on, what capabilities actually exist, and what's actually being exploited at the moment.
Seems like this. We've covered off a few episodes of the Jetsons today. I wonder what George would have said back to Jane in 1969 around.
Not this. For this broadcast, I don't think.
Well, a few years ago, we thought like sharks with laser beams were high tech, right?
That's right. Haven't you seen Sharknado, mate? Sharknado's a thing.
Yeah, and now detonations in space, right?
Actually, have you guys read or come across Tim Marshall, a British author? He's written The Politics of Geography. He's written a few different books, but his latest book that came out, and I should remember it. I think it's called the Politics or the Geography of Space, and it's about this. So he's gone from talking about in one of his first books, which is amazing, was about why certain countries were so successful and certain continents. So the US is so successful because they've got oceans on both sides to the east and west. They've got mountains to the north, keep the Canadians out. They've got the desert to the south to keep the Texans. No, you're part of the US. Sorry, Matt. To keep everyone else out.
Don't tell him.
I didn't hear any of that.
It's only a Hey, come on, mate. It's only a proclamation, right?
But you've got interconnecting river systems, whereas you look at Africa, 20-odd countries in one continent, no interconnecting river systems, political unrest. But he talks amazingly in his last book around what's happening in space and who's going to win that space race. And that is, it's an amazing read. Thank you for joining us to explore the intricate world of strategic AI and data collaboration amongst the Five Eyes. As we navigate the evolving landscape of international security, your insights and questions are invaluable. What aspects of national security are you curious about? What do you think the future holds for international alliances in the realm of AI and cybersecurity? Let us know in your comments or reach out on social media. If you found this episode enlightening, don't forget to subscribe here, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Your engagement helps us delve deeper into these crucial topics and bring you the most relevant, insightful content. So hit that subscribe button, share with friends, and stay tuned for more discussions like this one.